I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the time and place for the regular June 4th Marshalltown Community School District Board meeting. Welcome to all of you who are with us in the audience, and welcome also to those of you who will be viewing us on delayed broadcast. Allow me to introduce the board members at the table with me. From my right, we have Sean Heitman, Karina Hernandez. From my left, we have Mike Miller, Ben Fletcher, Janelle Carter. And at the center table with me, we have, We have Paulette Newbold, the board secretary, and to my left is Dr. Theron Schutte, the superintendent of schools, and I'm B. Niblack. If you are here and would like to speak to the board during the public comment section, we ask that you sign up on the pink sheet on the speakers table. You'll have 5 minutes to speak, but the board will be unable to respond to you according to board policy, but we thank you for your comments anyway. Please read with me the mission of the Marshalltown Community School District. We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills, and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences. And stand as you're able and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. We have one.
Added the ball team.
Yeah, we've got a pay application for the ball team that we didn't receive till Friday, but we really would like to amend the agenda to get it on there in order for payments to take place in a timely fashion. Those go through FEH to be reviewed and to make sure they're in accordance with our contract.
So you'll bring that up when we get finance. Okay.
It's in the consent
She
agenda.
included
Okay.
it under the contracts.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Carter Fletcher, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 6-0.
Andrew Potter, Communications Director. Today we have Mrs. Tice and Moises Garcia from the high school. Moises was a Science-Bound Student of the Year, so we'll have her explain what the program is about, and then we'll talk with Moises, who just got done talking at graduation, so he should be okay to talk in front of public. So, yeah, there we go.
Would you use the microphone in front of you, please?
Moises was recognized for having gone above and beyond in Science-Bound, which is exceeding the program's expectations, by taking advantage of a number of opportunities to develop himself academically, by taking challenging courses, and professionally by participating in summer research experiences. Science-Bound is very proud of Mr. Moises in his selection. Science-Bound is a program sponsored by Iowa State University to recruit underrepresented minorities in science, engineering, technology, and math courses and careers. The scholarship is offered by Science-Bound, offered by Iowa State, and provides a 4-year tuition to Iowa State University in accepted STEM fields of study. And there are a lot of them that they can go into. Our Science-Bound program begins by selecting students at the end of their 7th grade year. It goes through 8th grade, and they're selected by showing an interest in STEM areas and having the aptitude to be successful. This means maintaining a specific GPA and specific attendance. From 8th grade through graduation, we work with students on study skills, career exploration, resume and portfolio development, research opportunities, and internships. This support continues through science-bound staff at Iowa State. This year that we graduated 3 Marshalltown graduates from Iowa State University through the science-bound program. So, and this program is funded not only through Iowa State, but through many corporations and foundations here in Marshalltown.
Do you have some comments for us as well?
Happy to be here.
A little side note, so I think the first time I met Moses was when we were touring,
That was fun.
we were touring MLA, and Dr. Ryan Weiss from the Department of Education, the executive director, was here, and so as he was talking or trying to evoke comments from students and stuff, Moses had a lot of suggestions and comments, and actually it led to him sitting on the advisory committee for the Department of Ed for this past year, student advisory. So we're proud to have him representing. I think anyone that knows him knows that not only is he hardworking and goes after challenges as far as his coursework, but he's very popular amongst the students because of the way he treats them as well. He's a great example of character for our district, and hopefully will continue to be an outstanding role model for future students that pursue the science-bound as well as the MET program as well, because he succeeded with that too. So it was no surprise when it was announced at Science-Bound that he was the Science-Bound Student of the Year. So,
Yeah, nice.
so congratulations on
Thank you.
that.
Yes.
Is there money?
All the money goes. Thank you.
Have a nice day, you guys.
Thank you.
I will open the public hearing for the flexibility account resolution. Do you want to speak to that?
This is the resolution to transfer money from our categorical preschool account into a flexibility account to use for the IJAG programming for next year.
And you'll recall we had a presentation from Lori Fellon on IJAG, and we were excited to have been selected to have the opportunity to have 2 IJAG instructors, one at middle school and one at high school for next year.
Any other comments? I will close the public hearing for the flexibility account resolution. Looking at the consent agenda, are there any comments or changes for the minutes of Monday, May 21st? Any items of note, Mr. Spargettis, and personnel?
I do have an introduction.
Okay.
All right, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Rex Kozak. He is our new transportation director, given that you vote on his approval in the affirmative. Rex most recently was the high school principal at East Marshall from 2004 to 2015 when he retired. And since then, you've been running a business with your son, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So Rex will start with us on Thursday.
Right.
Officially. You have been down to the transportation
Yeah.
garage, though, to meet with.
Yep, I went down this morning to meet with Chuck, and then this afternoon to meet with the bus drivers, and got to hear some interesting phone calls come in from community members. So, very informative day down there. Very informative, very proud bus drivers. And they do, and got to talk with them. Met most of them. I don't know all their names, but I will get to know all their names. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to the opportunity. They're trying to do routes now for the upcoming summer school, and that was interesting being a part of that conversation today.
I bet.
Well, welcome to the district.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, welcome.
We're excited to have you on the team.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking at interagency agreements and contracts, we have a number of IJAG agreements, preschool agreements, sports trainer. Any questions or comments about any of those? In open enrollments, we have 3 out and 1 special needs child in for the 18-19 school year. Looking at donations, we have 3 donations listed. A donation from Wells Fargo Bank in the amount of $600 towards the staff end-of-the-year breakfast on June 6th, and you've all received that invitation if you would like to attend.
And that's actually Wells Fargo Advisors. So we'll change that for purposes of the minutes.
We have a donation of a buddy bench with an approximate cost of $600 to be installed at Hoagland Elementary. And the buddy bench is purchased by the family in order to honor an employee's spouse. And we have a donation from the Canada family of a bench and plaque with an approximate cost of $1,050 to honor Amy Kennedy, a former MCSD employee. And that bench and plaque has already been installed at Fisher.
And I believe at Hoagland as well. That was in memory of the counselor's spouse, and the counseling department from across the district actually spearheaded that effort for the Hoagland bench.
May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Miller Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Mr. McKevitt, please come forward and use one of the microphones.
You remember me wanting a microphone. Thank you for the technology that you all put in here. I haven't been back since that time, but it's great, and citizens would want to be back here again to listen and see what you have here, so I really appreciate that. Real quickly, I'm not going to burn up anywhere near 5 minutes, but this is kind of, as an old board member, a mea culpa. As we went through the month of May and the schools coming out here early, when we got MHS at taking exams and stuff, and school stopping at 1 o'clock, it brought me back to a lot of years in the past. And, you know, Marshalltown is a community that if we have the right project and the right thing to do for what you have there, is it good for students? Is it good for faculty? Is it good for staff? I can tell you that we'll help, and I can tell you that the foundation will help, and I'm certain that it's something the board's already discussed, but I think the phenomenal heat that we had in May brought to me as I was sitting at home wishing that I had accomplished this some years ago so I didn't have to come here and talk about it. But to have a high school now at the level that we have it and not have air conditioning in it, I think is, you know, I haven't checked the metric around the other schools in our area, but especially in the area that we function in, I would guess that they are pretty well. And it would seem to me, and when I started, I moved in at the high school in 1965, and we didn't have air conditioning, and we had a very hot graduation, and we went through that, and the great things that have been done in terms of the air conditioning that we have out there in the facilities, the new facilities that are being built. Thank you for doing that, and I appreciate the hard work all of you do, because it takes a lot of time and effort, and appreciate the president and the superintendent as what you've done. But I can tell you on behalf of the school foundation, and I say to you and ask you, what's the next project we ought to do that's a big project in our community, just like the Roundhouse and the projects that are being built. I can tell you that I am not the only one that would be here sitting today and saying, taking care of students, faculty, and staff at Marshalltown High School would be a project. And I'm fairly certain that you've probably already been discussed. I'm not bringing out anything that's brand new to you, but I just want to tell you that, and you all know this, Marshalltown's a community that if we put together a right game plan, we can get the job done. And so I can tell you I'll be supportive of you, and I know that there will be lots of other Bobcats that went to this high school many years ago. Getting that done to be good for our students, faculty, and staff will be there for us. So that's all I wanted to come to say. That I wanted to check your technology here, and it's fantastic. What a great improvement. So thank you so much for listening, and if the time comes at the foundation and those of us that are on that and working on that, it would certainly be a metric that I would jump on. I can tell you that right now, and spend some time, and I'd be willing to bet there are other Marshalltown Bobcats that I could get convinced to do that, just like we did with the other big facilities that are being built out there. So again, thank you all. I know you're busy, and appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue?
Thank you very much. I'm Sue Cahill, the instructional coach for the mentoring program. And again, I appreciate you letting me visit with you today about the mentoring program. The first thing, this was the first year that I have been involved with the mentoring program as a full release TLC position. Previously, we had a great mentoring program and have had since I was a new teacher 19 years ago and beyond that. So we have taken mentoring very seriously in this district. And I appreciate the fact that we took it to another level this year by having a full-time release coordinator. Our coordinators of the past set a great stage for me to work with our new employees this year. So I do want to give compliments to those who were the mentor coordinators in the past. The role of the mentoring program is part of our state requirement for mentoring, and it relates directly to our strategic plan in that goal 2 of staff development, that the second step of improving retention of staff and new teachers with particular attention to an employee's first 5 years of employment with the district. And one of the ways we do that is focusing on the successful orientation and ongoing support through professional development and recognition. So in our new teachers work, if they are brand new to teaching, they work for 2 years in the mentoring program. If they are a first-year person who's coming to our district with experience, then they serve in a 1-year mentoring program. In the last year, we had 61 mentoring pairs. That means there were 61 first or second year employees matched with an experienced teacher. Our matches are made building-based. So a teacher at Hoagland would have a mentor at Hoagland. A teacher at Miller would have a mentor at Miller. The mentors themselves complete a 1-day cognitive coaching training, and they are also part of our TLC employee program. We had 6 mid-year hires this year, and so we do have mentors that have been a mentee a half a year, as well as those in their first and second year. This year we had 10 people in the mentoring program from Anson, 6 from Fisher, 3 from Franklin, 5 from Hoagland, 2 from Rogers, 7 from Woodbury, 6 from Lenahan, 6 from Miller, and 15 at the high school. Our mentors and mentees attend meetings to advance their knowledge of what our district is about. They work together to learn how to be an effective teacher, how to follow the pillars of mentoring in their first year, which include how to have a positive classroom, to keep your students actively engaged, to keep teaching to your objective, and how to monitor and assess your students. This year, we also focused with English language learning standards with our first-year mentees, and our mentors work with the new teachers on their portfolio and their standard work, preparing their portfolios for their principals as evidence of the work that they've done in their teaching. We differentiate our monthly meetings for our second year and our first year experienced teachers, and they worked with Lisa Wymore in an implementing sheltered instruction class. Some of the classes are we have worked and really tried to listen to our mentors and mentees as we look at our professional development for them. Even next year, we'll have more choices for our second and experienced first-year teachers. We're going to try some online blended classes that will be online as well as part face-to-face. And we're going to restructure some of the first-year classes to better represent some of the items identified by the first-year teachers. This year, I've had monthly meetings with the large group of mentees. We would meet once a month. I was also able, in my role, to provide using the HumanX system that we use for our onboarding. I did 3 surveys with the teachers at week 4, week 10, and week 18. I shared that information that we gathered with principals and administration. And this spring, I was able to get into the classrooms of our new teachers and share reflections with them as well. Some of the items from the HumanX survey that were the top items that teachers wanted to share with me and I would ask them what were their successes as well as what were their challenges. And it was great to see their progression and their growth through the year. Some of the items that made me think that we need to put some more attention to these in our future mentoring programs are classroom management, our PBIS program, our technology access and how to work with all the different tools that we have for the teachers, and planning and working with not only our colleagues and our instructional colleagues, but also with our paraeducators and the other support personnel that we have in our buildings. The results of those surveys, by January, the majority of the teachers felt very settled in their roles, and less than 1% felt unsuccessful in their teaching role. So it was really a great progression watching them improve and use the tools that they had been working with throughout the year. In relation to the goal that we have on teacher retention, we have here the data on the last 5 years of our teacher retention. And this year, our retention rate is 85% of our new teachers are continuing with us into the next year. The rates vary from that 79, 72, 73, 76, with an average of our past 5 years being at 77% retained. At the end of the service, if a teacher does leave, HR does do an exit interview, or I know Dr. Schutte has done some exit interviews with people as well, but HR does contact and talk with, especially our new teachers, if they are leaving the district. I have gathered other survey data at the end of the program, and we'll use that to do improvements in our program next year based on what items were successful for our mentees and mentors this year and what items they felt we need more involvement in or more work on together. Do you have any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
So this year, we've taken a lot of time and focused on the poverty issue within the district. Are you doing anything with that, with the mentorees?
We have, that first year is pretty daunting. We talked about where our students, what the makeup of our district was in focus specifically on poverty. We focused on the English language learning standards. Some of the same pieces go together, but we know that next year in our professional development, that will be a stronger piece that we will share with our new teachers.
Awesome.
These numbers here, could you explain those a little bit more?
Yes, I can.
85% of what?
85% of the teachers that were hired for this year will be coming back next year.
Okay.
So if we hired, I think that the number of just first-year teachers was, I'm trying to think if it's 27? Yes, 37, I'm sorry. 37 new teachers. So 85% of those will be coming back. I think 4 of our teachers are leaving for.
So this is based on what we anticipate for next year versus this year, meaning like 2017, 18?
At this point, yes. The teachers hired in 17-18.
Okay,
We have had 4 people submit resignations at this point.
okay.
So 76% of the teachers that were hired in 2013-14 are still in the district. That's what that means. 70.
Oh, there's still, so that wasn't 1 year. They're continuing to be with us.
So that-
That
Yes,
class,
I
that class
apologize.
of teachers.
As a cohort
Yes.
of new hires, that percent is still with
Is still with
May
us,
of
yes.
2018.
Okay.
So 77% of the people we hired 5 years ago.
Or in the 5-year total.
So they're sort of different, each number is a different number.
Different
Right.
group of people.
Yes.
I mean, so, well, 80, well, it looks good to show this, it's not really comparing the same thing. You're looking at somebody who's been here for 5 years, 76% of the people who've been here for now 5 years, versus 85% of the people that have been here 1 year.
Correct.
So basically what we're saying is after a year or two, we still have pretty high retention numbers. And then around year 5, it gets to be not, I'm not pleased with 76 or 70%. We had 90% as our goal for TLC, for teacher retention. It's ambitious goal, definitely.
Tell me why tell me if you had to break down the reasons why people leave.
I would say out of my 4 people right now who have submitted their resignations, it is distance to work is the main reason out of those 4.
They live somewhere else.
So they commute.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they were commuting here to work. So that was the majority reason.
Okay.
I don't have that data on previous ones myself, so I can't answer that beyond the teachers that I know this year.
Nationally, a lot of the concern is not just leaving the district, but leaving education. With the first 5 years are the most volatile for people. And then, a lot of it historically, I think, has been related to, if you hire young, new teachers, oftentimes within that 5-year window, they may get married, spouse may work elsewhere, so they relocate there. That's a pretty typical thing, too. I don't think that we have a lot of people that leave education, who leave us during that window. It is probably more related to what you're talking about in terms of ultimately finding a job closer to where they live.
Just for a comparison, this was a statistic that came from the Learning Policy Institute, and they had this was for 2 years, 11-12 and 12-13, and they used a national average of left the school or the profession, so they included both. The national average was 14.2% that were leaving, so leaving 85% remaining, more or less. And Iowa's statistic of those leaving school or the profession was 13.4%. Other states around us varied from Minnesota being 16%, Wisconsin 16.2% leaving the profession, Illinois 9.6%, Missouri 14%, Nebraska 10.4%. So that just gives you an idea, according to these statistics, that we were a little below what they considered the national average for leaving the profession and leaving school within a 2-year period that they judged.
Other questions for Sue? Thank you very much.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to work with the new teachers.
Erica?
Hello.
Hello.
I'm going to scoot this up from where Sue was sitting. Okay. So I'm here to talk to you about ST Math, and our several different people, consultants from ST Math, worked together to create this executive briefing for us. So they kind of compiled lots of different data from different resources to kind of give an overall picture of our first year of implementation. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of parts of this. So the first heading underneath the title is Quiz Delta Data Analysis. So this is where ST Math pulls together a pre and a post quiz from every objective at every grade level. And then they looked at how our students did from the pre-test compared to the post-test. And an effect size of 0.25 is kind of like normal. That's what a typical student would grow throughout the year. And at second grade, there were only 4 objectives that showed less than that. And then as you see lower, there's the top 5 there at second grade that all showed significant growth. As we look at third grade, this is a personal note from Dan Tracy, who's the consultant that pulled this part of the report together for us. He mentions that any growth over 1.2, he personally considers a no question of program effectiveness objective, so really high achievement. And 4 of the objectives at third grade met that mark, so he was really impressed with the growth that our third graders made within the program. Similar at fourth grade, there were 5 objectives that passed a 1.0 effect size. And fifth and sixth grade had consistent learning on all but 2 objectives. And then the next part, he says, from my experience working with schools across the country, these growth results are not typically seen on this level at this large of an implementation. This is a result of the district being committed to utilizing this resource consistently. As teachers continuously get more familiar with ST Math, I fully anticipate even greater conceptual understanding coming out of this district, which is good to know. This was only our first year, and we definitely have some things in mind after having some conference calls with Dan about what we can do as a district to improve even more. But our first year of implementation has been very successful. If we skip down to the Marshalltown by the numbers section, as of May 9th, when they pulled this data together, we had 2,700 students working in the program. They solved over 9 million tricky puzzles, and 510 students completed the entire ST Math curriculum for their grade level. And now, as of Sunday, we are over 800 students who have completed 100% of the program. The next part is another interesting part they pulled together for us. They looked at districts in Iowa who are using ST Math and what their percentage of syllabus completed was, and the number of students using the program and the schools using the program, and kind of compared those to our district. And you'll notice that there are 3 districts in bold, and those 3 districts are districts who are in their first year of using ST Math. And the rest of the districts have been using it for at least 2 years, if not more. And Marshalltown is 4th out of all of the districts in Iowa using it as far as percentage of syllabus completed, and significantly higher than the next first-year district using the program. We are now at 66.4% as of Sunday, percentage completed. And then the next portion is a breakdown by school. The average usage rate for elementary schools across the entire country is 55% of syllabus completion, and all of our elementary schools surpassed that in our first year of implementation. And then the last bit that I'll point out is the fidelity usage rate. So this is a fairly complex formula that ST Math puts together, and can't tell you all that goes into that, but they basically rank schools' fidelity of usage between 0 to 2. And so the 51st percentile of all districts using this across the country corresponds to a fidelity score of 1.02. And Marshalltown, in their first year, our fidelity score was 1.5 out of 2.0. And according to Mind Research, that would place us in the top 12% of all elementary K-6 schools using ST Math in the nation, and we're still in our first year. So we're pretty excited about these results, and also know that we can use ST Math even more effectively next year, now having been through our first year. So do you have any questions?
Have you gotten any feedback from the teachers as far as them liking it in their classroom?
Yes. A lot of the feedback I've seen has been related to how kids, what teachers notice most is that when they start teaching something new, students are often saying, oh, we did this with Gigi. Oh, this is how Gigi, oh, I remember this from Gigi. So it works well to have ST Math kind of front load some of those concepts. And then when teachers go back to them in the classroom, they can build on what students saw with the games and the puzzles and the blocks and how that all fits together, to kind of build on that conceptual understanding.
So you would say it's positive?
Yeah, yes, very positive.
How do we measure success, or if what they're learning in ST Math translates out of ST Math, right? We know they're using it. We know, at least it sounds like this description from ST Math is saying they're successfully using it. How do we know how well that translates out of the program?
That's a great question. And I'm not sure I can fully answer that, but I can tell you that the pre and post quizzes are, how can I say this? Typical mathematics, it's the numbers, it's the equations, it's the paper pencil mathematics, whereas what they're doing in the program is more conceptual based. So the fact that they're able to make those gains on a pre-quiz to a post-quiz in this, I know this is still within the program, so not necessarily getting at exactly your question, but that growth indicates that they're transferring from the conceptual understanding portion to the actual numbers math. And in those areas where there aren't as high of post-quiz scores, we know that we as teachers have to do a better job of helping them see the connection between what's happening in ST Math to build the concept to what it looks like in paper pencil mathematics. I'm not sure if I can, I mean, ideally, we're ready for that to transfer to our test scores. I think that would be a good measure.
One way is the Iowa assessments or whatever replaces it. I didn't know if there's anything else in the standard curriculum where we could tell, hey, we're progressing through more curriculum.
Well, and see, this is the first year with our curriculum as well, so it's hard to, we're kind of at a baseline year in both areas. But AMath, yep, and once again, we're at a baseline for that because we just started that in the spring, but hopefully over time we'll be able to see growth with AMath, which is a fast system assessment like we do for literacy, and Iowa assessments, and then classroom assessments as well, but all of that was new for us this year too, so it's kind of hard to compare that.
Is your overall message hopeful, but I still have to wait and see?
I think so. Yeah. Yep.
I think the data that Erica has provided is pretty promising in terms of our fidelity of implementing the program and demonstrated success within the program that students have seen, especially when compared to others within the state and nation. And ultimately, we would anticipate that proficiency levels for grades and individual growth will improve as a result of it. The difficulty is that all these assessments are changing currently, including the Iowa assessments, which is the high stakes one for us. So we don't we may not have a baseline per se to compare it to until another year down the road, so.
One of the things that the company states in their exemplary comments about the district is that Marshalltown has an exemplary system in place with support from their math team to help support and monitor ST Math. What will be the monitor and support for next year with the math team no longer functioning?
We have built in a lot of those things with our instructional coaches. And we also have PLCs that will be up and running with math next year at the elementary level. So those ST Math reports will be something that coaches discuss with teams of teachers and look at with them on a regular basis. One of the things that we've discussed with ST Math is the idea of making sure teachers are looking at those reports and addressing the students that are kind of struggling through certain objectives. And then also another thing we're hoping to focus on next year is supporting teachers in how to kind of open the conversation about ST Math with bringing those puzzles into whole group instruction. Not instruction per se, as it's more like a group conversation about mathematical thinking. So that's one of the things that we're hoping to work with ST Math to have our coaches support at the building level as well for that.
It is nice to see that it's being well utilized.
Yeah. I agree.
Any other questions for Erica? Thank you.
Thank you.
Pam, do you want to join her?
I'm not officially on there, but I'm just going to say one thing. I had asked Pam and Erica earlier last fall when we were getting the curriculum committees up and off the ground to kind of keep in mind that I wanted them to do an end of the year update because I know we talked to you about committees and we talked to you about curriculum here and there, and then in April and May we come and ask you for money to help support with resources and professional development. And I just think it, in terms of data, which as a board we talked about quite a bit last year, and you wanting to have more information about resources and work that we're doing, that this is kind of a nice narrative summative way to show you data, because we try to show you numbers that are meaningful. But I do think there's some value in you also seeing an end of the year report in these core areas, which is the Iowa Core Curriculum drives all of this work that we do. And it's amazing the amount of the level of work that goes into these 4 core areas and what our secondary teachers do, as well as our elementary teachers who teach all of these core areas. So I asked them to put together, they had a similar template, and Josh, maybe if you'll just open the language arts one to begin with. We're not going to read these to you, you had them in the board reports, but I wanted to see if anyone had any questions in particular. We could just slide through the 4 of them. I don't want us to take 20 minutes, but it kind of shows you the what and the how and what we're doing, what kids, this is guaranteed curriculum. So these are units, resources, instruction that every kid in Marshalltown gets at school.
So each one of these kind of followed a similar format of starting with just the general standards outline, and then going into what that looks like in our classrooms. So that's just kind of generally how we organize that.
And then you can go ahead and go to the second area, please, which is math. You've heard a lot about math this year. We've really done a lot of focus on elementary math the last year of study, and this is year 1 of new materials, new tests, new ST Math, new everything. And then secondary math has been working with Pam this spring and will continue to next year. So you see there the Iowa Core Math Standards and kind of updates on some changes we've made to how we program math and give options to kids at the high school, because we know algebra is such a gatekeeper for so many kids when it comes to college readiness, and we don't want kids to have to repeat courses in community college that we are teaching at the high school. And then Erica did a summary here of what's happened in elementary math this year. You've heard a lot about Go Math, you've heard about ST Math, and the math professional development that teachers have been working on once a month on Wednesdays. Reading some of these secondary math topics, probably. Not great numbers, right? One thing that we are doing differently is for kids who in 8th grade or 9th grade are showing struggles with math is separating algebra into a 2-year sequence to go at a much more in-depth pace where kids get the conceptual, the abstract, and the representational so that we have less Fs and more likelihood that they'll get through geometry and algebra 2 as juniors and seniors. And you can also see there's classes on there that are co-taught or sheltered classes because they have high levels of students with special education needs or English language learners, as well as, as you know, we offer lots and lots of dual credit classes. And there's even some online classes that kids can take through MCC. That's 2 of the 4. Any burning questions about math or ELA? No, I see no's, okay. Science is the next one. And last year you were supportive of a big change in the new science standards with secondary science. We got lots of new resources and materials. And then this year, Erica presented the last couple of months about what the elementary science people have been working on to shift the thinking about how we teach science. Testing.
Oops.
Would you like me to repeat all of that?
No, it's probably good a couple of comments weren't on.
Okay.
I have a question. What's the difference between just physics and college physics?
I'm going to defer to Pam on that one. She knows the science classes better than I do.
So in order to access a college-level course, a dual credit course, there are specific requirements around proficiency on Iowa assessments that students must be able to meet in order to take the college credit class. We have students who do not meet those requirements to take the college credit class, so we've continued to offer a traditional high school version of physics for those students who either don't qualify or just simply choose to take a high school physics course versus a college physics course. The difference in that the college physics is lined directly with MCC's version of the physics course. So there is some differences in mathematics. We all know with physics that you can take an algebra-based physics course or a calculus-based physics course, and that is where some of the difference between the two courses are.
So does that mean they are doing calc-based physics at the high school now?
No, because the course that we align with at the college is a trig, an algebra trig-based course. In order to take, it's my understanding, at least when I was teaching physics, that to get into calc-based physics, you had to have Calc 1 and Calc 2 before you could elect that into that particular course, and not very many of our students complete Calc 1 and Calc 2 as a junior, which they would need to do in order to take the physics class calc-based as a senior. So the few students that might be able to do that, there's the option of going out to the college or doing an online course for those numbers of kids that might desire that.
Okay.
Who teaches mystery science and who teaches Project Lead the Way?
So mystery science will be the core classroom teachers, and Project Lead the Way is taught by our STEM specialists, so in a specials type format.
Okay. Social studies is last, but not least, because it's the baby that's about to be born. You'll get to hear about it next year a little bit more, but the state just released, you can see right there, May 17th May of 2017, the new Iowa State Social Studies standards. And so I guess par for the course in Marshalltown, the secondary's moving on it right now, we're moving first, and we had some social studies adoption resources last month also. And then elementary will be studying social studies in 1819. A committee will do that, and it's very timely and important because, as you might have caught in the last session, there was a requirement to add personal financial literacy, so we're going to have to come up with a way this fall to add a schedule into a course into our schedule of courses at the high school for our incoming, I don't know this for sure, but I believe it's our incoming freshmen. I don't think we have to retrofit that requirement for our sophomores, juniors, and seniors, but we'll have to read up on that and make sure that we're meeting the requirements. And social studies is topic-based, and really the new standards are focusing on inquiry into big ideas and problem solving. So it's kind of exciting, and some shift in topics in 7th through 12th grade too that you'll hear more about next year, because we did not adopt all the 7 through 12 social studies courses at one time this spring.
So teams of secondary social studies teachers will be working next week to develop and to realign the new coursework with the standards, which is why we didn't include any units, because it's in progress.
Any other question for the team? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The last item I think that my team has on the agenda is TLC, and I believe I understood the request correctly, that you wanted to be kept abreast of any new hires as they come through, and we had a big group of TLC staff that were approved at the May 18th meeting, I believe, or May 4th, they're all kind of running together. But if you see in bold any changes, you'll note from the last time you approved this as a board, so not too many. We did have a new PLC lead that needed to be hired at 3rd grade due to a teacher leaving. And these candidates went through the same process as everyone else, applying online. So one new PLC lead, and then Rachel Coulter will be a new PLC lead at Lenahan because their instructional coach, who was in that role, went to Anson. Miller, we're still slowly but surely filling in the PLC leads there. We have a 7th grade science, 8th grade social studies, science, and math who've applied and been accepted as PLC leads for next year. I think there are 7 changes altogether on this document. And then we did have an applicant for a K-12 counselor lead for the PLC, that team of staff, and that's Val Corson from the high school. And those were, there might be one more down in the SILT department.
We still have a few to go.
We still have a few, yeah.
We approved this with the fact that you could go ahead and fill the position, so.
Okay. It's just
do any of you feel a need to approve the new list?
So those last few that are remaining, would you like a list like this again at Judy 18th?
Just give us a list when you're done.
When we're done, okay. Sounds great.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Spaghettis.
All right, before you, you have the tentative agreement for the operations maintenance and full-time transportation personnel contract, otherwise known as the BNG contract. We tentatively agreed to a 1-year agreement. We made or added a tiebreaker for seniority in the contract language. We did a slight change to immediate family illness contract language, and the total package is 2.75%, 1.3 3.1% of which goes to wages. And Paulette, do you have the total dollar amount?
$68,102.
That's all 2.75%.
Pardon?
That's all 2.75%. So about half of that is that new salary.
Any questions for Anthony or Chris? May I have a motion to approve the operations, maintenance, and full-time transportation personnel agreement with a total package of 2.75%?
Move for approval.
Second.
Miller Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Oh, you're not doing the next one. You're doing the next one.
Yeah. So with the fringe benefits for administrators and supervisors and the package increase, we're recommending a 1.77% total package increase. There was an attachment, which is Board Policy 312.3E1, which there's also are some changes. The two most notable ones would be to put the national conference attendance, which would be once every 3 years, on there. That is something that our administrators had available to them until about 3 years ago when the budget was froze, and this would be available in years where we feel like we're in a fiscal position to accommodate it. The other, which is a change that in the past, for some reason, administrators were the only ones that did not have a separate allocation for family illness in addition to sick leave. So we're proposing to be more similar than different from the other groups for our administrators, directors, and others to have 5 dedicated family illness days that can be used throughout the year, not to accumulate, and then also be able to access 5 sick leave days for purposes of family illness for a total of 10 throughout the year. When we bring this back next month, we're probably going to have some further adjustment because based on where things are headed with our approach to insurance, most of that last paragraph is not accurate the way that it's describing things, so we'll probably just strike that for the next meeting and the next reading. We have this policy, since it is in policy, also in the board policy review down below.
Any questions for Dr. Schutte? I have a motion to approve the administrators, directors, and others' wages for a total package increase of 1.77%. And the changes to administrator benefits as noted.
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher Heitman, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 6-0. Mr. Wesley.
All right, good evening. I'm here to discuss the Chromebook replacement cycle for the 18-19 school year. As presented in late April, we published an RFP for approximately, exactly 2,360 new Chromebooks and cases. That should be for 7th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, Linehan students, and expanding the 2nd graders from a 2-to-1 ratio to a 1-to-1 ratio. Here we have the bid tally. On the RFP, we went out for 2 Chromebook models, a Lenovo model and an Acer model. The reason that we did that was based on some feedback from vendors. The past couple of years, we've been purchasing Acer branded Chromebooks. We've been very happy with the quality and ease of repair with the Acer models. However, speaking with sales reps, it was noted that the Acer prices for the next replacement unit was going to be a significant amount higher. So based on that knowledge, we evaluated other higher name brands, HP, Dell, to name a few, with Lenovo kind of stuck out as being one that might be a possibility, both due to its price point and quality. So that's the reason you see a couple of different brand columns here. You can see the lowest bid for the Lenovo model is about $200 per unit. That does include the Chromebook management license, which averages between $24 and $25 a license. Where the Acer unit for a similar unit is $241 a unit. Last year for the Acer unit, we paid $187.48. Some of the justifications that I've heard for an increase in costs, increase in RAM prices, components of computers in general. So based on this information, the technology department for Marshalltown Community School District is seeking approval to award CDW the bid for 2,360 Lenovo 100E Chromebooks, totaling $472,000. And then based on that approval, I would be seeking approval to publish an RFP for 430 form-fitting cases for the 100E Chromebooks.
Questions for Josh?
We offer insurance, right, on these things?
We do not.
Did we used to?
At one point, we did.
Was there a problem with the insurance?
Yes. From my discussions with Brian before Paulette was here, the reason that that was removed was based on the funding source that the Chromebooks was used for purchasing and it not being available to be insured.
Do we have families that paid for insurance and then never received the benefit of that insurance?
I'm speaking based on limited knowledge of the insurance program as it was before my time, but from what I recall, it was based on a one-year insurance for that year, and the students that did have that insurance did receive some sort of coverage on that. It wasn't a multi-year insurance program, so it expired in, what would that be?
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we sought legal opinion relative to the plan that had been instituted and how best to go forward to make that decision.
When you're buying cases for these, is there any way you can buy a case that makes it harder for the kid to get the Chromebook out of the case?
We are actually looking at gumdrop cases. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but it's a very form-fitting case, kind of more like something you would put on your cell phone. Yeah, it makes it more difficult for kids to get out of the case. It also makes it more difficult for my guys to get them out of the case to repair them, but it's a little bit more expensive for that case, but based on feedback, I think it's worth the investment.
Yeah, I have a son who damaged his, and now I'm going to pay you $90 to fix it. And he got a case, but you know, the Chromebook is over here and the case is like somewhere across the house that it's like too big and inconvenient to have on, right?
Right.
So I'm not blaming you, I'm blaming him. But if there is a case that is is harder to get off, that might be a.
And part of the reason for publishing that RFP is later is a lot of manufacturers with ordering new Chromebooks. We don't have a lot of options yet for form-fitting cases. It's something that these manufacturers have to get that device in their hands before they can make a case for it. So.
Well, and up till last year, we didn't have cases at all on the devices, and so we were seeing a higher numbers of damaged devices. And so in conjunction with moving towards middle school students, being able to take them home, we purchase cases for all of those.
Right.
We'll continue to evaluate both cost as well as quality as it relates to protecting them down the road.
Any other?
Yeah, one more. Do you know where the two brands are sourced? Are they made in the US or are they made offshore?
Majority of the components for any of these Chromebooks are going to be made
China.
overseas, yeah. And honestly, the differences between the major computer manufacturers, a lot of the components are identical.
Yeah.
You can set them up next to each other, and if they didn't have the Lenovo or Dell sticker on them, you'd have a hard
Right.
time figuring out which was which.
Yeah, so I was wondering. Okay.
Could I have a motion to approve the Chromebook purchase to CDW in the amount of $472,000 and approve the RFP for 430 Chromebook cases?
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher, Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Moving on to the property insurance.
We are heading into year 2 with Iowa Public School Insurance Program coverage, and the renewal for the property casual piece of that program for next year is at $201,746.26. The renewal for our work comp program for next year is $466,128. These insurance premiums are paid out of the management fund, if you remember. And then there's just a couple of new things this year. Josh is going to speak towards the cyber liability, which we actually have an option to increase our coverage limit for cyber liability. But we also have a new coverage that's going to start next year that I just kind of wanted to give you a brief overview on. It's called the Violent and Malicious Acts coverage, which is unfortunate we even have to have that. But we will now have coverage for any extended losses. It says this ensures the extended loss of necessary extra expense losses resulting from violent, malicious acts resulting in bodily injury at an insured location without the requirement for physical damage to the property. So if there were a violent act in a location that didn't result in property damage, we would still have coverage to maybe relocate or
Active shooter.
yes.
Let's just say it,
Yes.
active shooter.
So this coverage was not optional. It was decided as a pool, which IPSIP is, to provide this for all members. So that coverage for next year will cost the district $3,562 on top of those other two numbers. And then we have the cyber liability, which $2 million is going to be the standard for this year, but we can approve increasing our limit to $3 million or $5 million. The $5 million would be an additional premium of $4,684. But I'm going to let Josh speak to some cyber liability issues.
So depending on the news source that you kind of look at, the average cost of a successful cyber attack is anywhere between $3.6 and $7 million. And if anybody kind of watches the news, we've seen things, Johnson just earlier this year and what happened with their school district, cybersecurity groups that kind of study, what areas get targeted. Education always comes up as being one of the areas that hackers like to go after. It's kind of viewed as low-hanging fruit, and cybersecurity incidences have been increasing for education and other industries just in general. So I believe for the $4,600 price tag, it would be my recommendation to more than double that coverage.
Questions for Josh or Paulette?
What was the tax? Where's the cost come from? Is it ransom? Is it repairing and rebuilding systems? Is it?
Yeah, it's not typically through ransom, but it is dealing with the recovery. If we were to lose Social Security numbers, there's things that we have to go through as a district to notify people, and there's costs associated with that. I don't know if you've ever received a letter in the mail saying, hey, your identity, or we've lost this kind of data. There's costs associated with that. Loss of data, I mean, if we lost one of the systems with all student information system or something like that, it can be pretty catastrophic for the district. So, and it's not to say that the technology department isn't doing our due diligence to make sure everything's backed up and as secure as possible. But the mantra in the cybersecurity arena has turned from it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when an attack like that is going to happen. So,
Is this being provided through or by a local insurance agent or company?
I think so. It's Gallic.
This is through, Mark Rohde is with Independent Insurance. He's our rep.
He's the assigned rep for this, I think.
Okay.
Other questions? May I have a motion to approve the 2018-19 property casual renewal, including the recommendation to increase the optional cyber liability coverage from $2 to $5 million?
So moved.
Second.
Heitman Miller, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. The motion carries 6-0. Thank you. We have the online fundraising campaign. It's come back for its second reading, well, its first official reading.
Yeah, so this was brought forward a couple meetings ago for review. It was suggested at that reading that we change the wording a little bit from IASB to remove the board from responsibility and overseeing and put it on district administration, particularly director of instruction, to try to help gatekeep the things that people are putting out there for online fundraising or crowdsourcing. So this is the second time, I think. Yeah, first reading was on 5/21. This is the second reading.
May I have a motion to adopt 704.6?
Second.
Fletcher Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries 6-0.
102E1, as was stated at the initial review, this was an adjustment we made based on our equity visits to align with the current legal language for CTE areas.
Can we do a bunch of these together?
We can, except,
Because
yes, yeah. Yep.
we're going to make a motion and waive the second reading, so if we could do.
Yep. I'll just keep moving.
Yep, just.
Elections 201, as mentioned at the last meeting, we just made an adjustment with IASB language to primarily identify November as the election month now, going forward in odd-numbered years, and to bring clarity to the election process by aligning with their language. So no changes have happened on this since our last meeting. Educational record access, again, to bring in line with IASB's language. We've got just a few things highlighted through it. But in addition to this policy that we had, there were a number of regulations and exhibits that were tied to that. So 506.1 R1, 506.1 E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, E6, E7, and E8 are all brand new that would need to come back for a second reading, I'm assuming, or not?
Well, if we word it right, it won't.
Okay.
That's why I was thinking we have a few more on there.
Yeah, these are all straight from IASB, so we're just adopting their regulations and exhibits. And
So we've got 102.E1, the annual notice. The elections is 201.4. 506.1 and all of the attached exhibits on students' records access.
regulation and exhibits.
Right. Through 506.1E, we only go through 7, but you mentioned 8.
I think it's in the next batch.
Okay, so that's 506.1E old, which is E8, the new. It's been a renumber.
Yep.
Does everybody see that? Okay. All right, let's stop at that point. May I have a motion to amend the above-mentioned policies and waive the second reading?
So moved.
Second.
Heitman Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 6-0. Now we're at 506.2.
Yes.
Okay.
506.2, student directory information. This is our existing policy. The only thing that we've really added here is a definition for what is meant by student directory information. And again, we pulled that from IASB. Public examine of school district records, which is 901, formerly 801. The primary thing here was we changed basically information based on IASB recommendation, and we changed the hours of operation to match what our actual hours are there.
And the number.
And the number also.
Could I have a motion to amend 506.2 and 801 to 901 and waive the second reading?
So moved.
Second.
Heitman Fletcher, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 6-0. Okay.
312.3E1, fringe benefits administrators, supervisors. We talked through this earlier, and this will need to come back, but we will also be doing some work on the last paragraph relative to benefits to make sure that it is, if it continues to exist, that it's in line with our current and future practice there.
Any questions before that comes back next time?
506.2E1, authorization for releasing student directory information. This was it actually Yeah, it's an exhibit which IESB had, which we didn't. It's tied to what we were speaking about with student director information. This was pointed out by Lisa as, by having this, it'd be really beneficial in terms of aligning with our online registration process and having this document.
Which will come back.
Yep. Paulette, do you want to talk about purchasing bidding?
There was some, actually, we added a kind of a regulation, right? Did we put the chart on there?
Yeah, so we've got 705.1, which is the policy on purchasing and bidding, where we're going to delete the old and approve basically the ASB language.
Correct. Within that, we are moving the construction and contract, or the public improvement purchasing and bidding within that 700 number for the way IASB has it set.
And I believe, based on their language, it also encompasses what was formerly in 7.501R, purchasing policy regulations, so we were recommending that be deleted.
And that one was actually a duplicate with another policy. There was a 705 or 708. There was another one exactly the same as that one, so we're just deleting the one.
And that will come later with the construction bids. 705.1E1 is an exhibit, which is new, but it actually, I believe we should be calling that R1 instead of E1, because it's a chart. It's a chart relative to bids, and what we're recommending there is a slight change from what we had on our chart, which was in the 800 series on construction, to where we increase the threshold without quotes from it. The minimum currently sits at 10,000. We would increase that to 25,000 for goods and services to mirror what our current practices with public improvements and having to seek quotes for things between 25,000 and 55,000.
So if we have that new bidding exhibit, will we not need Ben's 801.5E1?
No, because it's encompassed in 705.1E2, which I think should be actually R1. I think it should be a regulation versus an exhibit.
So we have a new 705.1 purchasing, which is deleting the old. We have a new policy, 705.1R1, which is deleting 705.1R and 801.5-E1.
Correct.
So the two, 705.1 and 705.1R1, will need to come back. Any questions before we move on? Okay. Mr. Fletcher.
All right. 801.1, only change there would be to renumber it to 801.6, that's naming facilities.
So you would like to mark that as
I would
reviewed?
mark as reviewed with the number change.
Okay.
And then, I believe this came from Dr. Schutte, but a recommendation to have a new 801.1 coming out of IASB for schools, facilities, long-range planning, which would be in coordination with our general long-range planning.
Correct.
So 801.1 new will need to come back. Okay?
801.2, some updated references, but other than that, Mark has reviewed.
Okay?
Same with 801.3, some updated references, but Mark has reviewed. And also the same with 801.4, Mark has reviewed. And then you mentioned 801.5 E1 and 801.5, well, that's also tied to the 705s. So is this one now redundant?
Yes. Yeah, all that was within those two is actually captured in those 700 policies.
So 8015 and 8015E1 will be deleted. Okay. Yay. Anything of note, Mr. Potter?
Oh, that was awesome policy work.
We're getting better at it. It'll be a thinner book by the time Dr. Schutte gets done with it. Any legislative update? Yeah, right. Reminders that our next school board meeting will be on June 18th. Also a reminder that you will be receiving the annual board self-assessment. You'll be using the same one that we used last year. And I will send that out to you pretty quickly, maybe even by tomorrow. And we need to have that back from you so that we can start compiling that information before the next meeting. So please get it to me by 15th, June 15th. Just send it back to me. And then, once we get all that information compiled, we will need to have a work session to go over the self-assessment, to set board goals, and to set Dr. Schutte's goals. So start looking at some dates so that we can set that work session at our next meeting. Hopefully, I'll have Ross here and we can get him in on that as well. Questions? Okay. And Ross has the next set of board policies. Looking at committee reports, did either Karina or Ben go to the SIAC committee meeting?
Yeah, I made a SIAC.
Pardon me?
Yes, I went to SIAC.
Would you be so kind?
Sure. I guess main comment, not main comment, but the first comment is it was basically not attended. It was Dr. Stevenson, Dr. Schutte, me, and I forget her name, but former teacher, community member. Yeah. So as we discussed in maybe the first meeting this year, we need to figure something out to make sure those meetings are purposeful and attended. I don't know what the answer is to that, but Dr. Stevenson provided information regarding IO assessments. Mixed bag. I assume you're going to present to the broader board in July? Okay. So it's maybe a preview. Reading, generally positive. Math, not so much. But we'll see more of that in July.
Yeah. Charlene, any information from the Finance Committee?
We talked primarily about insurance of different kinds. Is that fair?
Which we've all talked about again tonight.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. What have we done tonight to improve the education for all of our students?
A whole bunch of Chromebooks again,
Lots of Chromebooks.
down to the second graders now.
Mhm.
One-to-one.
Melanie, you got a good report on the fidelity of implementation of how the Chromebooks are being used relative to STMath.
I liked hearing what Sue had to say about the mentorship program. That
Yep.
was-
It was nice to see the curriculum, to know what's being taught at every grade level throughout the district on all of our core subjects. My quote for this evening comes from Mr. Anonymous. He pops in every now and then. And it says, "Summer vacation is a time when parents realize that teachers are grossly underpaid." We have an exempt session for negotiations, followed by a closed session for the evaluation of the superintendent. So thank you all for coming, except those of you who are going to be here with us. Yeah, that was a good time for a break.
Do you have the?
Oh, I do.